What has occurred is over the past 100 years, manufacturing, as it has changed with the technology, has also changed in terms of how it is characterized. If you went into a steel mill in 1950, you would see sparks, you'd see a lot of dust, you'd see a lot of heavy equipment, you'd see a lot of workers, and it would be a fairly rough man, heavy industry environment that we all think of when we see a steel mill. Now let's go to a steel mill today. The works over in Gary, Indiana, where the big heavy steel is still produced in the United States. What do you see? You see a control booth with engineers before computer screens, with robotics. They're pressing buttons, they're feeding data into various computer programs. The robotics are running a large part of that mill. Now, there are still men down on the floor, all right? But it's a whole different industry than it was. Now let's go to a sheet metal work. Someone who's making let's say medical instruments. Again, in the 1950s, there'd be scrap laying around. It wouldn't be certainly the dust-free or dirt-free environment. Today, you go to a high-end metalwork shop, and again, you see individuals with computers making instruments with very, very fine degrees of precision. And you could eat off the floor of these so-called factories. They're not factories anymore. What are they? They're really technology centers that produce products driven by very talented, knowledgeable people, all right? So that's how it's changed. And at the same time, what's happened is, because of the technology, it's taken a lot of the brawn out of manufacturing and replaced it with brain power. And you need fewer people. Now, I remember when I was a child, they talked about how computers were going to destroy American business. There'd be huge layoffs. It was called automation. And at that time, they were concerned about the armies of bookkeepers in businesses that kept ledgers and books and records, and how IBM's big blue boxes, they used to have these refrigerated rooms with false floors to get these huge boxes to run companies' computer programs. And they'd have punch cards coming out, and they'd have tape. It was a whole different, but that was that generation of computer power. Well, what happened? Well, the people in the eye shades were eliminated. But did it cause huge amounts of unemployment? Well, no. Well, what occurred? Other industries were created because of computerization. Think of the space race in the 60s, Sputnik, that started that. And all of these products that came out of the development of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo missions, and then all the space laboratories, and even today. This created other products and service spin-offs, which created other manufacturing, other sales, other repair. So we constantly were absorbing more people as more and more of these products came online, all right? So what's occurred is you have fewer people now in manufacturing today than you had in 1980 or 1990. Yet what has occurred now is we are making very high-end precision manufacturing. So we're making airplanes, we're making robotics, we're making precision medical tools. These are high-value products. So today, the United States is the #1 manufacturer exporting in the world. Most people think, well, isn't China? Well, China produces a lot of low-end furniture, clothing, etc. But what we're producing is high-end, all right? So we really export more than any other country in the world because we still have this manufacturing base. But it is much more efficient because of technology and because most of the people involved now are more skilled, specially trained with engineering degrees, 2-year degrees from technical or community colleges, or even 1-year certificates or apprenticeships that give them specialized skills, and they are constantly going back to get upgrades. A good way of looking at this is farms too, because farmers, if we got in my time machine and went back 100 years in Wisconsin to 1907, and I talked to a group of farmers and told them that 100 years later in 2007, that only 2% of the population would be farmers instead of 70%, and that those 2% would produce 3 times as much food as they did in 1907, they would have laughed themselves silly. But this is what's happening. This is that's exactly what happened because of what? Technology. And look at the agri-sciences here at the University of Wisconsin and the other schools of agriculture in Wisconsin have improved ag science, as a great deal of other breakthroughs with the other great agricultural universities and research centers in our country. So now the same thing is happening with manufacturing, all right? So there may be fewer people, but those people have to be very well prepared and constantly updated, because will these tech breakthroughs continue? Yes, of course. And will we even have new products and services we can't even think of? Right. So in a way, we have to prepare people today for jobs in 2020 or 2025 that don't even exist yet. And think of things like soft contact lenses. Well, we didn't have those in 1970. Think of cell phones. Think of high-definition television. Think of all the medical products that are out there today that didn't exist 10, 15, 20 years ago. And is that going to continue? Well, of course, this is a consumer-driven capitalist society, and the need now is worldwide. This is not something that is just here and now, all right?